Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show. Before I get on out of here, I had to talk about a story that's very, very important. And albeit indirectly,
the sports world is holding its breath again, staring straight into a scenario that felt unthinkable just months ago but now feels almost unavoidable. What we are watching unfold is a slow, grinding collision between the WNBA's old power structure and a new economic reality created by one transcendent player. And if the latest whispers are even half true, the league is losing this fight. This is not a routine contract dispute or harmless off-season noise designed to keep timelines buzzing. This is about the potential exit of Caitlin Clark from the WNBA altogether. A move that could unlock a compensation package rumored to soar past $100 million. This is no longer internet speculation. Stephen A. Smith, the most influential and well-connected voice in sports media, has sounded the alarm publicly and repeatedly. From the ESPN desk, he has warned that jealousy, unchecked physical play, and a broken salary structure are pushing the league's most valuable asset toward the door. If this scenario becomes reality, Caitlin Clark would not simply be leaving the Indiana Fever. She would be detonating the foundation of American women's basketball, exposing a system unprepared to protect, pay, or properly value the star that changed everything forever. In real time. To understand why this situation has reached a boiling point, and why Stephen A. Smith keeps returning to this topic with visible frustration, you have to strip away emotion and focus on the economics. This is not a feelings debate. It is a business case, and by every measurable indicator, the WNBA is failing it. Caitlin Clark is not simply another highly touted rookie navigating the normal growing pains of a professional league. She represents a market shock, a sudden injection of demand that the league was structurally unprepared to handle. In her very first season, she became the central driver of ticket sales, television ratings, merchandise demand, and mainstream media relevance. Entire road trips were restructured around her presence. Teams that struggled to fill 4,000-seat arenas were suddenly moving games into NBA buildings holding 4 times that capacity, and still selling out. Networks that had previously buried WNBA games in off hours were now promoting them in prime slots, chasing audiences that had never previously engaged with women's basketball. This was not organic growth. It was Caitlin Clark. Stephen A. Smith has repeatedly emphasized that this level of impact is unprecedented, not just in women's sports, but across modern professional leagues. He has pointed out that the financial ripple effect of her presence extends far beyond box scores or jersey sales. Charter flights, expanded media coverage, sponsorship interest, and future broadcast negotiations were all accelerated by the attention she generated. Yet despite this seismic influence, her compensation remained locked inside a rookie scale designed for a league that did not anticipate a star of this magnitude. Her base salary hovered in the mid-$70,000 range, a figure that becomes increasingly absurd the more context you apply. It is not poverty wages, but it is completely disconnected from the revenue she helps generate. Smith has framed this disparity as not merely unfair, but structurally dangerous. When the person responsible for driving a massive percentage of league-wide attention receives a fraction of 1% of the financial upside, competitors take notice. This is where the $100 million discussion originates. It is not a random number pulled from thin air, nor is it internet sensationalism. It is the logical conclusion of an open market correcting an artificially suppressed value. Outside investors, private leagues, and international clubs see a glaring inefficiency. They see a league unable to pay its most valuable asset due to internal constraints, and they see opportunity. Stephen A. Smith has compared this moment to historical inflection points in sports, when outdated compensation structures collided with modern revenue realities. The WNBA, bound by its collective bargaining agreement, cannot simply rewrite the rules for one player, even if that player is carrying the league's commercial momentum. That rigidity is exactly what makes the situation volatile. Critically, Smith has also dismissed the argument that endorsement income offsets this imbalance. While Clark earns significant money through sponsorships, those deals exist precisely because of her on-court platform. They do not excuse the league from paying her appropriately. Endorsements supplement value, they do not replace employer responsibility. In other major leagues, stars receive both. The disconnect here is not subtle, and Smith has made it clear that ignoring it invites consequences. When the market recognizes value that the league cannot, the league loses leverage. And right now, that leverage is slipping fast. If the issue were purely financial, Stephen A. Smith believes the WNBA might still have room to maneuver. Money can be renegotiated, structures can evolve, and future agreements can be adjusted. What cannot be easily repaired is culture. From the moment Caitlin Clark entered the league, there was an undercurrent of resistance that went beyond healthy competition. Instead of being embraced as a rising tide capable of lifting everyone, she was treated as an intruder disrupting an established hierarchy. Smith has described this dynamic as deeply personal, rooted in resentment rather than basketball logic. Veteran players, many of whom spent years grinding for recognition, appeared threatened by the speed and scale of Clark's arrival. The attention she received felt undeserved to them, not because she lacked talent, but because she had not endured the same struggles. This tension spilled into public discourse almost immediately. Comments framed as welcome to reality landed more like warnings than mentorship. Attempts to minimize her collegiate achievements, some factually incorrect, fueled online backlash and widened the divide. Smith did not hesitate to label this behavior what he believed it was: jealousy. He argued that the league had failed to internalize a lesson long understood in men's sports. When transformational stars arrive, veterans protect them, not punish them. They recognize that increased attention benefits everyone. Instead, the WNBA allowed a narrative of resentment to fester, creating an environment where Clark was framed as a problem rather than an asset. That hostility did not remain verbal. It became physical. Smith has repeatedly highlighted moments where Clark absorbed unnecessary contact that crossed the line from competitive to punitive. The most infamous incident, a blindside hip check away from the ball, became a flashpoint. The lack of immediate league response spoke louder than any press release. It required public outrage and sustained media pressure before disciplinary action followed. To Smith, this delay signaled institutional indifference. In other leagues, stars are protected not because they are fragile, but because they are valuable. Physical intimidation that risks injury is addressed swiftly. The absence of that protection in this case raised serious questions. Smith has drawn parallels to earlier eras of sports, noting that even in famously physical leagues, enforcers existed to shield franchise players. Here, Clark appeared isolated. The message, intentional or not, was clear: endure it or leave. That message carries weight. When players feel unsafe, when they believe the league will not intervene, alternatives become attractive. Smith has argued that no amount of marketing can override the basic need for professional security. A star who feels targeted will eventually seek environments where skill is prioritized over spite. The league's attempt to frame this as toughness backfired. What was presented as competitive grit read as bitterness to casual viewers. For new fans drawn in by Clark, the optics were damaging. Instead of showcasing elite basketball, the league appeared hostile to its own growth engine. Smith has warned that cultural failure accelerates economic collapse. You cannot sell a future built on a star while simultaneously allowing that star to be undermined. At some point, self-preservation takes over. Once trust erodes internally, external options gain power. Stephen A. Smith has emphasized that Caitlin Clark's leverage does not exist in theory, but in very real, very viable alternatives. The rise of new domestic leagues offering equity, shorter seasons, and dramatically higher pay represents a structural threat the WNBA cannot ignore. These leagues are not competing on nostalgia or tradition. They are competing on logic. Fewer games, less physical toll, and compensation that reflects market demand. For Clark, the appeal extends beyond salary. Ownership stakes, revenue sharing, and long-term influence represent freedom from restrictive systems. Beyond domestic alternatives lies the global option, the one that truly terrifies league executives. European clubs operate under a different economic philosophy. Backed by massive organizations and public funding, they invest heavily in star talent. Players are treated as assets to be protected, not tested. Smith has pointed out that history already provides precedent. Elite WNBA players have sat out entire seasons because overseas teams paid them more not to play. That reality never disappeared. Clark's global appeal would only magnify it. In Europe, she would not be hazed. She would be celebrated. Smith has also highlighted the symbolic danger of high-profile investors openly offering to build new leagues around her. Whether or not those leagues materialize is almost irrelevant. The signal they send matters. The private market values Clark exponentially higher than her current employer does. That contrast weakens the league's negotiating position and emboldens competitors. It also raises uncomfortable questions for broadcast partners. Media deals are signed on star power. Ratings follow personalities, not logos. If Clark exits, the value proposition underpinning recent agreements changes overnight. The so-called Caitlyn economy is fragile. Attendance spikes, merchandise sales, and mainstream relevance are all tied to her presence. Smith has warned that assuming fans will remain after she leaves is wishful thinking. Casual viewers follow stars. If she plays overseas or in a rival league, attention follows. The WNBA's challenge is not replacing her production, but replacing her gravity. That is not easily done. Ultimately, Smith frames this moment as a referendum on leadership. Protect the asset or lose it. Adapt to reality or be corrected by the market. Caitlyn Clark does not need the league to survive. The league, however, may need her. Stephen A. Smith has placed the spotlight squarely on WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert, and he has not softened his tone. He argues that her primary responsibility is to protect the business, and in this case, Caitlyn Clark is the business. When the jealousy narratives escalated, when the reckless fouls became routine, and when toxic discourse hijacked the media cycle, the league's leadership went silent. Instead of drawing a hard line, the commissioner attempted to appease everyone, and in doing so, protected no one. According to Smith, a decisive commissioner would have acted immediately. Fines would have been issued. Suspensions would have followed. A clear message would have been sent that the league stands behind its most valuable player. That never happened. By refusing to step in, the WNBA effectively endorsed the hostility surrounding Clark. The message was unmistakable. She was on her own. And when an organization makes its biggest star feel isolated, undervalued, and unprotected, it should not be shocked when she starts exploring exits. That reality explains why leaving makes sense.